name of the podcast is Dream, Plan, Execute, where I highlight individuals who dream frictionless, plan thoroughly, execute relentlessly. And Christian, you are one of those persons.
I was born in Moscow, Russia. I was going to go into finance because I got a degree in economics. And I went into music because I was musical my whole life. And that was sort of one very unusual move, very unlikely to succeed. But then I was just very, very lucky to become one of the top pop artists in Russia for about a decade. My whole life I've been sort of in that pocket of Ikigai, meaning, reason for living. And I love music. So I thought, okay, let me try. And then, it was just very, very small baby steps. And it was terrible. I mean, I was really bad at first. I didn't know how to write songs. Then I became good at writing songs. I didn't know how to do choreography. Then I became good at doing choreography. Start thinking bigger than yourself and doing bigger than yourself and believing bigger than yourself. You will absolutely be a much more successful human being across all dimensions. To me, the difference between dogmatic religion and actual faith is that dogmatic religion believes something that has nothing to do with reality, and against reality actually clashes with it, which is pathetic. Actual faith is an experience so transcendent that is actually the most true thing you can possibly understand about life. The word exponential speaks to me because I don't want stability, I don't want safety, I want growth, and I want impact. In my soul, that's what I want. I've lived on 4 continents and 6 countries, and what a ride it's been. I've seen a military coup in Chile, fled as a child refugee, survived the civil war in Mozambique, and watched the Soviet Union collapse. I've lived through danger, poverty, and under oppressive regimes. From afar, America stood out to me. The resilience, the entrepreneurial spirit, the freedom. It was magnetic. Fast forward, I became one of Russia's biggest pop stars, even helped Boris Yeltsin defeat the communists in an election. My story did not stop there. I went on to become an entrepreneur, an evangelist, a philanthropist. Now I've poured that passion into my little book of big reasons to love America. It's my love letter to this country as an immigrant. 10 chapters, 10 powerful reasons packed with stories, insights, and illustrations. Every chapter has a bonus video content that you can unlock with a QR code. This book isn't just for you. It's the perfect gift for someone who loves freedom as much as you do. Grab your copy today and let's celebrate the incredible gift that is America.
Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Ramon. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. The name of the podcast is Dream, Plan, Execute, where I highlight individuals who dream frictionless, plan thoroughly, execute relentlessly. And Christian Ray Flores, you are one of those persons. When I talk about persons who dream, plan, and execute, you do it on both sides of the brain, the left side and the right side of the brain. Being an entrepreneur, a high performance coach, an evangelist, a philanthropist, having a master's degree in economics, fluent in 4 languages. He lived in multiple continents. I mean, the body of work that you've possessed. I haven't even gotten into your pop culture, pop star song that you've actually been on stage performing is phenomenal. And I would love for you yourself to just kind of bring us back to what is your why? Why so much body of work, and what is your purpose that you're trying to drive towards?
Well, I would say the body of work is more of a condition. It's not necessarily it's a condition. Like I'm professionally ADHD. That's what I say, and I think I find that a lot of creatives tend to have those same tendencies, where you have sort of 2 or 3, 4 passions back to back to back to back, and we have a hard time picking our lane. And there's a downside to that, and there's definitely an upside to that. So I think for me and people like myself, when I coach people, I say, look, minimize the downside, maximize the upside. So the downside is when you don't focus well enough, you don't get deep, and you don't achieve scale. The upside is that most people that have done great work are usually people that have sort of a very eclectic set of interests. So Steve Jobs, he liked calligraphy.
Right.
Because of his love for calligraphy, he ended up being the Steve Jobs that started Apple, and sort of the design part comes from that. And but it ends up sort of happening in tech, for example. And almost anybody who you see doing extraordinary work has a very eclectic set of interests, and so that's usually the upside of trying different things.
So did you always know? So and I love that answer because it's very nuanced, and I find myself being in that kind of category with a lot of things. Where I've
Mm-hmm.
played tennis, I've played soccer, I've did kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and you find yourself like doing a lot of different things, and then kind of needling down to like the
Mm-hmm.
core things you want to get done, right? So for me, I ended up in construction management, but before that, I was an artist. Like I wanted to draw, and I recognized I can't go back to my parents and say I could be an artist. So it was almost like all right, what's the happy medium where I can get what I want and you can get what you want? And it was like I could be architecture major, and then I was
Right.
like, okay, that's fine. And
Right.
then everyone at my school at the time was more like, well, we're going to become doctors because everyone wants to be a doctor or a lawyer. This is like the thing in the Caribbean. Like everybody wants their kids to be a doctor and a lawyer. And I'm like, I actually want to do construction. And they're like, well,
Right.
that's kind of peculiar to go to a school that prioritizes medicine and doctors and lawyers to want to do construction. But
Yeah.
I kind of stumbled my way there, like, hey, no, I don't want that. This is what I want for myself. And I kind of feel that's kind of the premise you've had in your life too, right?
Well, you learn s- something valuable, the essence of a certain type of thing, and then you learn something from another field. Eventually, you can combine things in ways that are unusual, I would say. So, and you if you have the capacity to combine insights, skills, um, aesthetics,
Right.
philosophies that are not normally put together, you have obviously the capacity to stand out. And that's I think the I mean, it's
And
been the essence of most of my work. Pretty much, I've changed 5 different careers, and all 5 came with that kind of quality, right? So
I
so
like
I
I
think for
like that
some
you said
people,
that though. Like you've done 5 different careers and you've been in multiple countries.
hmm
And it can kind of bring us back to like the beginning where Christian is a young man starting his life. Let's say 4 or 5. What was life for you at 4 or 5?
well, I was born in Moscow, Russia. My mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean, and we when literally I was born and we moved to Chile, so I was a baby. And then a few years later, we were going to stay there. There was a military coup, and it was an ultra right sort of fascist regime type group, and they overthrew a leftist president, and my parents happened to be supporters, right? So
Got you.
both my parents were Marxist, um, and they the military regime proceeded to imprison and torture and kill a bunch of people. Like tens of thousands of people were arrested all over the country. My dad was one of them, so he ended up in a concentration camp, and then my mom was in hiding. Then he was released, thankfully. We're in a refugee facility for a while. So that was sort of the beginning. I was 5 years old, quite literally. and
Wow.
um, and then we sort of ended up uh, being exiled, essentially. So as exiles, we're got accepted to go to Germany, stayed there for a while, went to back to Russia for a while, then we went to Africa. So by age 7, I was in Africa, and it was
What
definitely
country?
in Mozambique. Yeah.
Mozambique. Okay.
So by age 7, I had changed 4 countries and 3 continents,
Wow.
which is I think quite a lot. So you start seeing how a lot of the eclectic stuff starts. It's embedded there, it's almost hardwired, right? Um, and I grew up there. We went back to Russia when I was a teenager, 14 years old, and I was still under the Soviet regime, so very oppressive, very unfree. And I was there when the whole thing came crashing down in '91. And was going to go into finance because I got a degree in economics, but
Right.
then I went into music because I was musical my whole life, and that was sort of one very unusual move, very unlikely to succeed. But then I was just very, very lucky to become one of the top pop artists in Russia for about a decade, and that was sort of my first professional success.
Are you familiar with the concept of ikigai?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just find that you kind of did that. I
I
mean,
did.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
you just kind of, it's like, this is good. Like, yeah, you could have done the finance route and you would have been fine, right?
I
You
think
really
so.
could.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. You would
yeah.
have done
I would
it.
have probably been more financially successful than I was, but definitely not as exciting.
Right. Yeah, because it's not your passion isn't there. Your love for it isn't there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah. I've lived in Ikigai my whole life, which is very unusual.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, quite literally, when show business stopped being fulfilling me in a certain way, I literally left show business, where most people would thought I was crazy out of my mind.
right.
And I was just sort of, I'm done with it, and I just moved on and did other things after that. So my whole life I've been sort of in that pocket of ikigai, right? Meaning, reason for living.
For living, and then, like, not just living, but I love it because I found out about it way later in my life. But
Hmm.
I always was like, I want to do something that makes me want to get up in the morning. And I just don't think you need to do something that doesn't get you up in the morning. And also, at some point, you should be able to get paid for doing it, right? And I just
Yeah.
had that, accidentally run into that. And I find that sometimes other persons, their focus was on the money, but not just the passion. And
Hmm.
so you reach, you feel stuck in your career, you feel stuck in your life because you're not getting that feeling of, like, I
Yeah,
like
and
this.
you end up not actually doing well in the long run, because you're pursuing immediate output right away, right? Results. Okay,
Right,
this is giving me stability, or this is giving me a higher income, etc., or status. But if that's not fueled by a deep sense of meaning and purpose, I am meant to do this, and
right,
this is why, it's going to probably backfire, because the you will not go deep enough to be an expert on a level that can only be driven by deep passion and obsession.
right.
And also, you probably won't be able to overcome obstacles when they become significant enough, because your main motivation is comfort or stability, and that doesn't hold water when you start getting hit by storm, by a storm of some sort. So I think in the long run, it usually backfires, and I find that I want to inspire people. That's one of the main things I want to do, is to say, look, you have in you something very specific, very unique, and it could be used in all kinds of different ways. That's up to you. But please find that unique quality about you, your interest, your passion, and almost an assignment that you have. And that's the ikigai place. And when you are in that place, you will, even if life doesn't get easy with that choice, you will come on the other side victorious, fulfilled, and you'll find growth, you'll find deeper meaning, and you'll probably find, most likely, more happiness, more health, and more wealth as well.
Yeah, I find that the ikigai for me personally was that was a dream aspect of things. Like, that's how you formulate, because time is a limited resource. Your energy is a limited resource,
Yeah.
and so you want to spend time doing something that it not only is going to be fruitful for you financially, but for your spirit, right? I
Yeah,
have
that's
this.
right. Yeah.
I think of it like, I'd say the universe is infinitely growing in all direction, and that means wherever you stand is the center of the universe, technically. And if
Yeah, yeah.
you can be a light, you could be a black hole, but that choice is yours. You do the things
Hmm.
necessary to, project your light. Now, one of the things I was very curious about is, how did you get into music? Like, how did you know you were musical? Because I think most people find it hard to figure out, like, that's that thing that's inside them. So how did you realize that?
I found it hard as well. It was really more of something I liked doing
Okay.
for a while, and then I stopped for a long time. Basically, the way it started was I was very, I had a very good vocal tone, since I was like 5, So
Got
my
it.
parents would basically say, "Hey, sing to our friends we're visiting." So I had like a nice voice, just naturally.
Gotcha.
So they would do that, and then when we moved to Africa, a friend of ours, we were part of this, is this immigrant group. Most of us Chileans, and they did this Latin American ensemble, this choir for kids. It was like a choir because a choir is usually a cappella, but we had guitars and all that kind of
Right.
thing, right? Drums, and we would sing these Latin American classics. I mean, it could be Argentine, Brazil, Chile, places like that, and we would rehearse every week. And I just found myself being lost in that. I thought it was just the most special thing. So there's an intuition that comes into it. I'm mentioning that because most people can find that if they pay attention to what got them in a state of flow when they were kids, when like time stops. So eventually, when we moved to Russia, I abandoned it for a while because it was not even a viable career. Russia's very top down at the time. It was very state owned, and actually, it's
Yeah.
back to being that as well now. But it was like there's no way, there's no chance of anything like that being a professional thing. So, but then as a teenager, I got into breakdancing, and it was this underground scene. There were very
Right.
few of us, and I I got really, really good at it, And then I was like, well, I can sing, I can dance, I can move like most people can't.
Right.
And what if I can start a career like that? And it was sort of that's where I made the choice of giving it a try. And I was super bored. I was working in international trade for a little bit on a very low, like an intern of some sort, kind of thing. It was just boring I couldn't do it. And I loved music. So I thought, okay, let me try. And then, it was just very, very small baby steps, very, very small. And it was terrible. I mean, I was really bad for at first.
Right.
I didn't know how to write songs. Then I became good at writing songs. I didn't know how to do choreography. Then I became good at doing choreography. All these other things. Yeah, that it's very, very gradual. And then it develops into something that's marketable over time.
Right.
And then you're an overnight success, everybody thinks.
You know what? I think that moment is where you learned how to do so many different things. You learned the skill of learning and developing skill. For me, it was tennis. Your music moment was my tennis moment. So for me, I was a fat, short kid that
Hmm.
had no business being on a tennis court, right? My
Hmm.
mom bought me the tennis racket because she didn't want me to play soccer because my skin is easily scarred. She's
Yeah.
like, listen, tennis, you're across the court. You can't get hit. It's going to be all right, right? So I have the tennis racket. I'm running across the court. I can't get to any of the balls. Like, I cannot get to anything because it's putting it all the way out to the corners. And I just decided that at one point, like, my first step is to try and get to the ball, right? So I started getting to the balls, and of course, people are laughing and jeering you on because you're this chubby kid trying to get to tennis balls, right? But after some time, I got
Yeah.
smaller, I got slimmer, and then my natural weight translated as a advantage to me because I had more power behind my shots, right? So now I'm
Ah,
getting to the
yeah.
balls. Now I'm hitting the balls a lot harder than most people, right? And now I'm also playing at break time and after school. So I'm playing twice a day.
Yeah.
And now you're getting taller, you're getting stronger, and people's aptitude to you. You get to, I learned like, okay, to learn a skill, you need to put time and effort and
Yeah. Yeah.
patience into it. You got to put time in. And then overnight, like you said, I became national champion, right?
Hmm.
It seemed like overnight to everyone else, but
Yeah.
I was playing 6 days a week constantly, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you get into flow state. I got slimmer, became regional champion, became national champion, and then eventually got the principal award in primary school. But all of that happened from just being super, like I said, diligent and just
Hmm.
doubling down on it. And to me, I was like, if I can do this for tennis, anything I decide to do, I'm just going to take that same philosophy and just translate it here.
Oh, absolutely. It's transferable. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's what you did when you finished with music and you had to do finance. I kind of feel like I'm sure it's starting into
Mm.
finance. Was it easy for you? Did you find economics easy or was it a challenge, like moving
I,
from music to
I,
economics?
well, actually, I moved to ministry, then to philanthropy, then to music video production, then to marketing. then to
Okay.
coaching. So those are the
The
like I became
steps.
an evangelist first, and basically because I became a Christian when I was like 26, and it changed
Wow.
my life so powerfully that I thought, man, if I can do, like, if I have the talent to be on stage and entertain 10,000 people, I would love to learn the skill of speaking on stage and change somebody's life forever, right? And
Right.
that was my passionate impulse. And also, I because I'd grown up in some of the poorest areas on earth in Mozambique, I wanted to do philanthropic work, and I became very interested in how can I use my platform, my fame, my celebrity to attract attention to the orphans in Moscow. And we did, we visited them, we became friends with them, and we created these big events for them once or twice a year. We'd do like a big sports festival and music
Oh, that's
festival for them.
amazing.
And so we would bus in probably like 3,000 orphans at a time into a
Oh,
big
that's amazing.
place, a bunch of volunteers, and I would bring in, so I would perform, and I would bring my celebrity friends to perform for them as well. And it was like a big deal for them. And so that was a big thing. Eventually, that Michael Jackson came to my event in Moscow,
Amazing.
and which was crazy because he was my main inspiration actually for
Yeah,
my life.
idol, right?
So when he showed up, it was like absolutely surreal, completely surreal. Um, and that, I did more of that work, and I'm still doing that work. So that stayed with me, the philanthropic piece. I was a director for Latin America for this big charity in the U.S. when I moved here, and then I started an academy, an after-school academy in Mozambique a few years ago called the Ascend Academy, and it's basically this. It's a small charity for to take kids and give them character, computer literacy, and communication skills in English. Um, so that's sort of added to my like passions that don't go away, basically.
And I can see in your background that your passions live with you too, because I think you got a Prince photo in the background.
I do.
You like, and Prince is good. I actually went to Minneapolis for 2.5 years. Yeah, that's where Prince is from. I
Oh
had the
yeah, yeah.
project goes out there.
Paisley
I mean,
Park. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and it's big out there still. I
Yeah,
see the cross, and I love that poster you have. Dream big dreams.
yeah,
Of course, the book to the side, and we'll get into the book later. But let's talk about your journey to Christ, because I know that especially in 2024, everyone's very shy about their spirituality.
yeah.
But I see that you're not, and I
No, no.
respect it a lot. I
Well,
respect it a lot.
look, honestly, you can. I even use it in my coaching in the sense that it's not. You don't have to be a Christian to be a client of mine,
Right.
but as long as you don't mind me quoting the Bible. And the reason I say that to people and I incorporate that is that there are actual scientific studies about human flourishing. The my favorite one is the one out of Harvard, and it was the Harvard study of human development, adult development. I think that's the name of it. The unofficial name is the happiness study, the Harvard happiness study, and it's the longest running study on the planet on what makes people happy and successful. And there's one of the top four factors that are responsible for your flourishing long term is a transcendent practice. I mean, it's just data.
Yep.
It's not dogma. It's data,
Right.
and the data is it's very easy to explain.
Yeah.
Look, if the center of the universe of your life is you, it's first of all it's boring and pathetic, right?
Right.
And also it's incredibly subjective by definition. But if you have a transcendent experience with the divine, where you broaden your horizons and your thinking and your practices to what's the moral code of the universe? Is there such a thing, and why? And you at least explore it, and want to start thinking bigger than yourself, and doing bigger than yourself, and believing bigger than yourself. You will absolutely be much more a much more successful human being across all dimensions. So, and then on top of that, I experienced profound transformation through my relationship with Christ, through the Bible, and I've never been the same again. And it's literally helped me in every aspect of life. I couldn't hold, for example, I'll give you an example. I came to Christ because I was, literally had a number one hit, and I was clinically depressed because my
Mm.
girlfriend left me with our newborn baby and cut me off. We
Wow.
come from a tour. The apartment is empty. Right.
Yeah.
That's it. That like did me in, and I realized that it was actually my fault to a large degree. And I realized that I don't know how to build a romantic relationship or a family. I have literally no clue on how to do that. And through the Bible, through mentorship and coaching, some very good men, very wise men helped me how to rewire my brain about those things.
Right.
And I've been now married for 25 years, happily married, happy kids. And literally no one in my family has done that in 3 generations.
What was the rewiring? What was like, if you could put it into words, the rewiring that you had to do? Because I think, especially in my generation, we struggle with that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not easy to stay in a long term relationship. There's so much distractions
Yeah.
on the world. So, what was that rewiring that that wise person or
Well, I
so to
mean,
speak?
I can talk for hours about that, but I
Yeah.
would say, you know, I have these conversations with my 3 single daughters right now all
Right.
the time, right? But basically, I go, look, if you're not a sexual being or a physical being, you're also a spiritual being.
Okay.
So if you think of yourself as a spiritual being, and then you start thinking about sex as a spiritual practice rather than
Just
whatever,
a physical
just a
practice.
physical practice. It's not a
Right.
physical practice. It's a deeply spiritual practice. It affects you.
Right.
So just like you would, and if you pay attention to the Bible basically says, look,
Yeah.
you are, sex is the highest form of union between a man and a woman.
Right.
The highest spiritual form of union. It's compared to the relationship between Christ and the church, actually, in Ephesians 4. So that is the crown of a relationship. The foundation of a relationship is is deep friendship, alignment with character, alignment with goals, alignment of even gender roles, for example, right? How does that work? It's a beautiful thing once you start exploring it. I had
Right.
no idea. I had no idea. So, and to me, the difference between dogmatic religion and actual faith is that dogmatic religion believes something that has nothing to do with reality, and against reality actually clashes with it, which is pathetic. Actual faith is an experience so transcendent that is actually the most true thing you can possibly understand about life. So if you want to figure out marriage and relationship, choose the thing that you think is like behind the thing that's behind the thing, which means how are you wired to be as a man? How is marriage intended to be? How is the relationship dynamic intended to be played out? Right? What is the thing behind the thing? So the Bible has been around for 2,000 years,
Yes.
right? And it says things that have stood the test of time and has is there's proven actual facts. So before I became a Christian, I knew no one with a marriage that inspired me. Zero. Then I met this one gentleman who became basically my first coach. That's why I coach now, because he changed my life so much,
Right.
and I was this high achiever that can perform at the top 1% in one area and be a loser in the other, right?
Right.
And I understood that, oh, you can be a very gifted, very driven guy and still be really bad at something. And if
Yes.
you have a coach to help you fix that, there's no stopping you. That
Correct.
was sort of the thing for me. And with him, he's like, what do you believe marriage is? And I didn't have an answer for that. Why? Because I come from 3 generations of broken homes. And I was mortally afraid of marriage because it would break my heart eventually, or her heart and my kid's heart. And he said, no, no, no. Marriage can be absolutely successful and it could be for life. And he demonstrated that to me. And then I met other people who have this incredible marriage. I'm like, I'm all in, maybe. Okay,
Right.
how do you get your marriage to work? And I would literally be mentored by someone who had a good marriage. And I would say, okay, how do you pick that lady? How did you pick your wife? What attracted you? And they would just rattle it off, right?
Right.
And I would like, oh my gosh, that's like nothing how I think. I think I think if that person is beautiful, that's my number one criteria.
Ah, okay,
Well,
gotcha.
yeah, okay, great. Character, not even on the list yet.
Right,
Values, not even on the radar. Okay, not even on the radar. Friendship, any framework of the world, nothing.
right.
None of those things were even on my list. And
Mm,
these friends, they would be like, look, first of all, find somebody who is disciplined, who has self control, who is smart, who listens to advice, who is well read, especially in the Bible. Who can listen. If she's doing something wrong, you can talk to her and say, hey, here's what we believe in, you're not doing that.
nothing
And she can
aligned.
say, oh, I'm sorry, I need to go back to this, or vice versa. Who would have some sort of authority over her,
Right.
especially for men. Men don't accept authority. So my wife Deb, when I met her, I knew for a fact that she wouldn't even consider dating me if I didn't have men in my life that have authority over me. We'll talk to any secular guy
Yeah.
out there, the smartest, whatever, who is an authority over you. And they will look at you with like deer in the headlights look because they don't
Right.
even understand the concept,
Concept.
you
Right.
know? And for me, I can tell you, I can name you 5 names of people who are in authority over me, who I will submit to if I start messing up.
That's
That
amazing.
that makes a woman very confident in
That's
you,
amazing. That's
you know?
amazing. That's amazing. Those are gems because
Yeah.
I grew up with my mom in Jamaica, but my dad remarried or got married. They weren't married before, and my stepmom is very, very a spiritual person of the Bible. So her strength, they'll be going through, I wouldn't say difficulties, but like something comes up and you are observing how the persons interact with each other, and they're each other's best friends.
Yeah.
They're insufferable. They're each other's best friends. If you say something to my dad, it's like saying it to my stepmom and vice versa, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel privileged, really honestly privileged. Maybe as a kid I didn't feel it at first, but as I got older, I'm like, I'm happy that I have my stepmom in my life.
Absolutely.
Because she was so spiritual with the Bible, and she reads it every day, highlighted, and bad things would happen, and her ability to just not be shaken by it because of her faith
Exactly.
to me
Exactly.
was like inspirational. I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" Like most people would crumble under this pressure, but
Hmm.
because she has this faith and that God is going to provide and I'm going to figure it out, it kind of just fortifies. Then you go out in the world and you see persons without faith interact with problems, and you're like, I mean, this is a problem, but you shouldn't. I wouldn't say you shouldn't break, but you should still have like a resolve, like a knowing in your spirit that even though I see the Red Sea in front of me, it's going to get parted,
Yeah.
like as
Yeah.
opposed to like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So,
Yeah. People just crumble.
right,
So emotional self-regulation, what you mentioned, that's emotional self-regulation. You need to be able to turn stress into faith and creativity and joy. Do you have that
right,
skill?
right,
Can sexual self-control? Can you control yourself? If you
right,
can't control yourself with your girlfriend when you're 20 and you're both attracted to each other, are you going to be able to control yourself when you have a plateau in your marriage and you're 55?
right,
Or are you going to have a
right,
midlife crisis and go out and run away with the secretary who's 25 and leave
right.
your wife and get a Ferrari? You know, those are very, very, very practical questions that people need to be able to answer, right? Don't marry somebody who doesn't have self control, period. Because if he doesn't have self control with you, he's not going to have self control with somebody else at the workplace.
Right.
You
No, you're
know,
right.
don't marry somebody who doesn't believe he's a protector or a provider. Don't marry somebody who's unstable. Don't marry somebody who's a slave of anything, money, drugs, status, anything. Don't marry a slave to anything. Marry a free person.
It's so funny because I tell people all the time, you don't even need enemies. Your own self can be your own enemy. And like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
just avoiding self sabotage will solve like
Yeah.
80% of your problems because you can get there. And I think people are like, okay, let's get money. I was like, it's not even just getting the money. You have to govern yourself at that
Exactly.
new level. It's not just getting there, it's getting there
Yeah.
and staying there and
Yeah.
not breaking under the pressure and the requirements of you. You have to be able to be ready for that
Yeah.
vantage
Absolutely.
point.
Yeah. So that, I mean, all of that rewiring happened in just a year or two,
Wow.
and it changed me forever. Changed me forever. Right. Like I can have 5 careers, millions of more dollars, and three divorces by now, which is actually what happened with several of my very close friends who are sort of in that same space, about the same, my peers basically, right? They all have like multiple children from 2, 3 women. Most of them are married to like a, somebody who could be their daughter,
Right.
because they're successful and whatever. Um,
Yeah.
is it worth it? I don't think so,
So,
right?
yeah.
And just because I submitted and learned from a man who was wise, I rewired the way I think. I changed my character, and I have something that you cannot buy for any amount of money.
Yes, you got
Right?
self peace. It's funny. There's this. I love as much as I'm a Christian, and I'm going to get back to our Christian faith. I do follow some things from Stoicism, and there was a Stoic called
Mm-hmm.
Epictetus, and Epictetus was a slave, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he grew up
yeah,
as a slave. His master broke his foot. He walked with a limp, and he would now became advisor to Caesar. I mean, a
yeah,
slave
yeah,
now an
yeah,
advisor to Caesar.
yeah, yeah,
And he would see these rich folks run into the hall. Caesar, oh my God, I'm on my last million. I don't know what I'm going to do. And
yeah.
he's like, these people are like obviously rich, but their mind isn't fortified. They don't have that
That's right.
the
Yeah.
center inside them. They're still, like you said, slave to the money, slave to
Mm-hmm.
ambition, slave to status, versus being calm in
Yeah.
the storm, right? Even when Jesus got angry with his disciples, he weren't when they were on the sea. He was angry because they weren't calm in the storm. Like, trust
Mm-hmm.
that I'm gonna get you out of this. You're on the boat with me. You're on the boat with Jesus. Like, just don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. And so I find that for me personally, growing up as a Christian has helped me tremendously in a lot of the ways that I carry myself or problems that I navigate. I'm just like, it's going to be all right. I just need to get back to the Bible. For me, and I saw that you met him, my favorite Bible to read is the Maxwell Leadership Bible because it kind of
Oh yeah, yeah,
brings in both of the things that I'm passionate
yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah.
But you actually met John Maxwell. How
I
was
did.
that?
Yeah, yeah. Briefly, but yes, he's a legend, man.
That's
He's
a legend.
extraordinary guy. Yeah, I love it when people are quite literally at the top of the game in the world, regardless of their faith,
Right,
and they are unashamed of their faith, and that's how I choose to function.
right,
Like everybody knows who I am. I'm not going to be sort of this, dogmatic, judgmental person,
right.
religious, but I'm a faith person, right? So if you want to know me, this is how I roll, basically. So
Well, that's what I love, and I say it in a term of endearment, but I love our Muslim brothers for that because they're not afraid or ashamed of their faith, right? They live it and they show it and they do it day to day, and so like I just love when someone has that inside them because it's important. I think it's genuinely the unlock key for a lot of people's life. I've read it's so funny. I read this briefly. There's this person called Eli Durkheim, and they call him the father of sociology, right? And so he did a study very long ago, right before France went through this industrial revolution called Last Suicide, right? And he's like, there's an interesting dynamic at play here where on paper, the stock market is going crazy for us, right? On paper, for them, industrialization is getting good, and everyone's living a better life, right? We're not peasants in the grass fields anymore, but suicide rates are going up. And he concluded in his research that when they moved from a faith-based society to a science-based society, and we lost something. There was something lost with not having a church or a
hmm
structure where people come and
yeah,
interact and voice opinions and hear from someone, an adult, someone older than them. Like, it's going to be all right. I've been there. This is what I've done. This is the problems I had. Because in your head, you think your problem is you are the only one having this problem when everyone around you is having the problem.
yeah.
No
You're not
one's
unique.
saying,
You're special, but you're not unique. Yeah.
yeah, right,
The Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who is the author of the Gulag Archipelago. He's a Nobel Prize
Mm,
winner, and he was in the concentration camps in the Soviet Union. Then he was released, and he became this. He's literally one of the biggest contributors thought wise to the demise of the Soviet Union, just because he exposed the brutality of it all.
mm,
And he was asked, um, "Why do you think the Marxist ideal and the Marxist experiment um, end up with 100 million people dead
mm.
and just complete awful cruelty, human cruelty, and in the human cost?" And he basically said, because we forgot God.
Yeah.
And that was his answer, basically. And I think it's absolutely true. And one, actually, as a matter of fact, one of the chapters in my book is about how the Christian cultural texture was one of the key um, sources of success of the American experiment.
Mm,
You know, the Protestant work ethic and all those things. How I see it from the outside coming in, and how I see it as a person who grew up in complete atheist
right.
spaces, right? Cultural spaces. So I have a little chapter there about that.
And let's talk about that book because it's an amazing product that you created. The little book of big reasons to love America, and
Yeah.
I like the title. It's really good. So, in summary, what do you think are the big reasons to love America in this little book of
Well,
yours?
I basically the backstory is that I wanted to write something that would be optimistic, clear, with substance,
Right.
right? Not dense, but also with enough substance so people can pay attention. And from the standpoint of an immigrant who grew up in outside of America. And
Right.
what I found is a lot of America bashing is getting into the people start believing this stuff, right? When
Right.
you know, I'm ashamed to be an American and all of that stuff.
Right.
I find it to be deeply offensive and discouraging to me as someone who knows what the alternative is, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and I think many immigrants, especially first generation immigrants, we all feel that. We all go, "Are you kidding
Yeah.
me? You know, this is
You
the
have
best
no
place."
idea.
You have no idea what you're talking about. And it's not doesn't mean that we don't critique. Actually, in the book, I do critique and everything. It's
Right.
not sort of this. You don't ignore the national sins of America, but what you do need to understand is that this is a very special place, and basically the idea is that there's a constellation, almost like the stars aligned, of several factors that all work together to create one of the most prosperous societies in history,
Right.
the most actually prosperous society in history, that has also, by extension, have has lifted many other societies out of poverty because of just the impact even outside of the US, right? But I would say I talk about acceptance of immigrants, you know, a
Lady
cultural
Liberty in New
acceptance.
York. Yeah.
Yeah, and a cultural acceptance where you can be from Jamaica and you can be American, and people are like, "What's the accent from?" Jamaica. And
Right.
they will not think of you as not American. You're Jamaican American. That's it.
Right.
You know, same thing. And I think that to be a powerful cultural layer, right? Freedom is another one. Creativity is another one. It attracts a lot of creative people, including
Yep.
entrepreneurs, scientists, people like that. So technology gets developed through creativity. Um, just in general, prosperity. Faith is another one. Philanthropy is another one. Grit is another one. And then the pursuit of happiness. So it's 10 chapters, 10 reasons. And I usually share sort of a principle and idea, a lot of fun stories. Like I have some crazy stories, right, from all over the world. And
Right.
then quotes. I have every chapter has like 6 quotes from notable cultural figures and people like that. And it comes with lots of either pictures from my personal archives or AI generated illustrations. So it's very visual, very immersive. And every chapter comes with a QR code. So you can scan it and see. videos of me telling more stories
Oh,
from
that's
that thing.
amazing.
So basically that's the project, and you can read it in an afternoon. So that's the other idea. The little book idea is that, hey, I want to give you a lot of substance, a lot of fun, but you don't have to like spend a month reading it. You can literally on a Saturday afternoon sit down with a cup of coffee. By evening you'll be done with the book.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it from my little sisters. I'm definitely gonna get it from my little sisters because I think it's important. I grew up outside of America. Like
Yeah.
my two sisters are born here, and it's important for them to be able to understand that they are in the greatest nation ever built. Because
Yeah.
I know what it's like. For instance, I give you an example. My mom, right? My mom's here in Florida now, right? My mom is, I don't want to forgive my mom, but she's in her 60s, right? And if you don't become a lawyer, a doctor in Jamaica, you have no chance,
Hmm.
zero chance of owning a home, really, or unless you become an artist or a soccer player. But you can't be someone who work a regular 9 to 5 to be able to buy a home and a car, right? My mom worked extremely hard for many years, right? And in the space of being here in America for 2.5 years, almost 3 years, she's able to possibly purchase a car,
Yeah.
possibly purchase a home, right?
Hmm.
That's transformational. That is the power of America. You come here and you're willing to work, and you're willing to put your head down and get the job done and work, you
Yeah.
will be compensated for the hard work. There are other places in the world you could work 10 times as hard and
Yeah.
you will get absolutely nothing for it. There's
Yeah,
nothing.
I talk to my dad a lot, and he's very socialist, right? And he lives in Chile, and he has
Right,
all these sort of socialist ideas about, oh, America is so greed and capitalism and this and
right,
that. And as I go, Dad, tell me, point to me a country in the world where, in order for you to be poor, you'll have to want to be poor. Like in America, the only way for you to be poor is maybe you have the capacity, you have some impairments, physical and mental.
right,
Maybe you're on drugs, maybe, but you have to. Other than that, you have to literally decide, I'm going to be poor to be poor.
right.
If you are willing to work, you will be easily in the middle class of America. In most of the planet, you can't do that.
You
You just
cannot do
can't.
that. That's just not how it's set up. It doesn't
No,
work
it's
that
set
way.
up. You are poor. You are born poor, and you die poor.
Yeah.
That's how it's set up. You
From
know.
middle class to other words is different. And you have to do a, but you see, the flexibility in America allows you, if you try and you
Yeah.
get the right mentors, you can get there. Like, for instance,
Absolutely. Yeah.
these big companies, Apple, Nvidia, all these companies are born here in America because of the freedom, like you said, the creativity.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, America is the best at marketing, hands down. Like, if I say the Canadian dream to you, it sounds strange. If I say the Brazilian dream, it sounds strange. Everybody in the world knows
Everybody
the
knows. Yeah.
term
Yeah.
the American dream. It is
Yeah.
the best branding strategy ever created, and they get the best resources from every country.
Yeah.
Persons like myself and you were bought into the concept of the
Yeah.
American dream that you can come here, you can work hard, you can do well for yourself and your family. And they
Hmm.
get not just financial resources, they get mental horsepower, people
Yeah.
come in here wanting that for themselves and their family. So, yeah, I love the book. I love the concept of the book. And not only do you have the book, but I love the coaching program that you've put together. And I love the name of it, actually, the
Exponentially. Yeah.
Exponential Life. So, tell us about what it means to have an exponential life and have you
Well,
as a coach.
basically, the idea is that you really don't have to, accelerate, hit a hit a wall and then stay there, or hit a plateau and then stay there and dip. Which is a lot of people actually end up hitting a wall and just staying there.
Right.
It's really designed for people like I was, people
Okay.
who are very driven, who want exponential growth. The word exponential speaks to me
Yes.
because I don't want stability, I don't want safety, I don't want protection. I want growth and I want impact. In my soul, that's what I want.
Right.
And they're kind of people, that's what they want. Right? Now, those people have a lot of drive, a lot of talent, a lot of energy.
Right.
And a lot of the times they don't have the wisdom, the the dimensionality of success escapes them, right? So they're
Yes.
very good over here and they're very bad over here. And because I've lived a lot of life, I would say I would lived 3 lifetimes, in one life.
Right.
And because I've studied this for a long time and I've coached for a long time, I really care for the high achiever, and you won't hear that very much, right? Because people want to care for for the person who is underprivileged.
Right.
And I do. I mean, I'm a philanthropist. I love doing that. But I actually really care for the high achiever. Why? Because the high achiever is the person who changes the world. He is the one, or she is the one, who creates jobs, who creates innovations and breakthrough in science, in literature, in music, in business.
Right.
That's the high achiever. And these are people who are very, very valuable. And oftentimes, I would say most of the time, even the high achiever, they don't really reach their potential because they ignore an important piece of their life that needs to be developed, just like I did.
Right.
So I was top of the world and crumbling. You know how many people I know who were top of the world and crumbling, and they never made it back up.
Yeah.
And many of them suicide.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
that is a huge loss for humanity. Huge loss, right? Not only suicide, but not reaching your potential is a huge loss for humanity, because you are uniquely brought to this earth to do something special. So
Right.
my passion is to help high achievers. Actually, people who say, I want high performance in my life as a standard, as a baseline. That's who I want to help. I'm not there to help somebody who's just sad and wants to feel better, or who
Right.
wants a little inspiration. I'm there to help people who want to do very hard work on themselves
Right.
to excel and be in peak performance for a lifetime. That's
And
basically
say
what I do.
someone wants to be a part of your coaching program, like how do they get in touch with you? Is it
Oh, you
Instagram,
you
email?
can you can join. We usually have a wait list, right? And
Okay.
so every month there's like a few spots that free up, but we have a wait list normally. And basically, what you do, you just go to the website. It's exponential.life without the e, starts with an X,
Right.
and you just check it out, see if it's your cup of tea. But it's not for everybody, right? And then if you go, oh, you know what, this really does feel like the thing that I need. This is going to take me higher. Then you take an assessment. It's called the exponential scorecard there.
Okay.
And it's a free assessment, and you answer like 40 questions plus. It takes like 7-8 minutes, and it will give you at the very least a great report. This is where you're strong. This is where you're weaker. This is where you're in the middle. And if you take that assessment, there's a button there that you can set up a call with us, and we can go through your assessment with you and give you some pointers for absolutely free. And then in the middle of the conversation, if we feel like, oh man, this is really good fit, then we can tell you how to join the waitlist.
That's amazing. And I love the term exponential because for me, I always, and I had it on my whiteboard in my room at one point, it was 1.01 raised to 365 equals 37.1x, which
Mm-hmm.
means if you grow 1% each day
Mm-hmm.
for 365 days, whatever task you decide to do,
Yeah,
consistent each day, you get this exponential growth to the upside, 37x, whatever you started at the beginning. And it's
that's
just that,
absolutely true.
and
Yeah.
that exponent, I always love playing with the concept of like what works in math, if you apply it somewhere else, will work somewhere else. And
Yeah,
you
one of the
just,
key things. One of the key things we do. The first thing we do work on is your morning routine. Why? Because it's every day you'll improve by 1%, 100%, and
nice.
it's gonna absolutely transform your life. But to introduce a routine, for it to be a habit, and for it to be then a ritual, something sacred,
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of time. It takes guidance, right? So most people just give up. They just don't continue.
And then the coaching is super important because like I find high performers always have a coach, guaranteed.
Oh,
Like
100%. Yeah.
a boxer, even if he could, if you see a boxer getting ready for a match and he
Yeah.
doesn't have a coach, it looks weird. Like, why don't you have a coach with you, even though
Yeah, we
it's
expect it
box?
from athletes. We don't, and sometimes we are strange. We're like, well, why would you want to coach? I'm a very smart guy. I'm a professor, or I'm a pastor, or I'm a this, I'm a
Right.
that. Well, that's why you need a coach, because you're doing hard things, You want to do great things.
Right.
And for that, you need high performers. I mean, that's just you're trying to be a high performer, you
Right.
know.
Right.
That's,
Right.
so like, you've never seen an Olympic athlete, show up at a competition going, yeah, I don't have a coach, I just coach myself. Like, people
Right.
would go, yeah, we don't believe you.
Right. Yeah. It's strange. And one of the concepts I always play with on the podcast is an athletic mindset, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I see myself as an intellectual athlete, right? And
Yes.
so, as an intellectual athlete, your highest priority is skill development. You develop skill, you do the hard work to get skill. After skill is flow state. It looks effortless, but it was effort put in upfront
Yeah. Yeah.
to get effortless flow, right? But
Hmm.
you can't do that without coaches because you cannot see your blind spot. I've done jiu-jitsu and boxing, and you could swear how many times a boxing coach would tell you to keep your hands up. You get tired, you need someone to remind you, keep your hands up, keep your hands up, because you
That's right.
feel like
Yeah.
you
No,
have your hands
absolutely.
up and you don't have your hands up, right? And so,
Well, here's another insight for you from the athletic piece, right? That
mhm,
people are surprised about sometimes. You will never see an athlete on the ring
right.
in a depleted, tired state. Never.
No, it's, yeah,
And yet, in business, you're tired all the time.
right.
Why?
It's a good
You're not going
question.
to be a high performer if you don't know how to rest. You will not be.
That's
You're not going to do great work. You're not going to be in a creative state if you're in a depleted state. And it's insane how hard it is for me to convince people, show me your skills of rest. And they don't have those skills. They
I
simply
like
don't.
that.
And they take pride on the fact that they don't have those skills. And I go, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like,
Right.
you're not, you're
But
not, you're not fulfilling your potential if you don't know how to rest.
it's so funny you say that because, like, I've seen coaches, jiu-jitsu coaches, boxing coaches, and they'll talk about this very often at times, and they'll say the difference between like the person who's in the gym who went there 6, 7 times for the year, 6 times, and the person who becomes champion is their recovery.
Yeah.
It's literally it's not the person. This person has the skill to pay the bills,
Hmm.
but they're doing things that are in hindering their progression exponentially. Not sleeping
Absolutely.
right,
Yeah.
not drinking while they're training right. Don't
Hmm.
have the right person in their corner as a wife or a supporter who can
That's right.
help them
Yeah.
through finance and
Hmm.
health. There's so much that goes into being a peak performer. That's not just doing the activity. It's
No,
everything outside of the activity that when
that's
you
right.
come game
That's
day,
exactly it. Yeah.
that you get that trigger piece.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, people say like you're doing so many things, and like, I don't understand how you sleep, or when do you rest? And I'm like, dude, I am every day I rest, every single day. I'm never spent. I work very, very hard, and then I rest very, very hard, and then I work very, very hard, and I rest very, very hard, and I know how
Nice.
to combine those things. And actually, if you work a lot, like if you take an average day, you do not have anybody more than 3 hours of high intensity, high productive work in you
Yeah.
in one day. Never. The rest of the time, you might as well just do some sort of minor things, and then you just chill,
Right.
rest, relax, because then the next day you can do some more creative work again. And most, especially executives,
Yeah.
CEOs, they somehow at some point buy into the myth of burnout as a glorious, glamorous thing. They do, and then they just lose the ability to even discern the path forward, and then they can't lead a team, and they wonder why their marriage is falling apart, the numbers are not there, all
Right.
of that stuff. So,
'Cause they're carrying heavy weight. Like you have so much weight on your shoulders, literally, and
mhm.
you need to be able to. Like I said, it's not just getting there, but staying there. Like
You're
people,
depleted.
and
Yeah,
you're
if
depleted,
you're depleted, you won't perform.
and you end
Mutually
up
exclusive.
being in a misstep. Like everything starts snowballing,
That's right. Yeah,
out
yeah,
of control.
yeah. And so that's why sort of this idea of hustle culture. I don't really believe in it. I mean, there are probably very short periods when there's a deadline of some sort you can,
Right.
turn on the hustle. But I would say hustle culture is a permanent state of being. It's unsustainable for most people unless you have this sort of Elon Musk gene, right?
Right.
Who that's all he does. He works. And I would say, even if I had the Elon Musk gene, which I don't, I probably wouldn't want the cost that he
Yeah,
pays.
it's a price to pay that
Yeah,
he's paying.
I wouldn't pay that kind of
Price.
price.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want it badly enough for that
Right.
to pay that price.
Yeah. No,
So
it's a tough price to pay.
yeah, and I would say, okay, if you're an Elon, okay, maybe for the benefit of humanity, it's a good thing to have an Elon.
Yeah.
Most people under Elon, I doubt that they will be healthy long term if they sort of
Right.
keep that pace in that depleted state on.
Yeah.
I really doubt. I think it's unlikely.
We see it. It's funny. Like in Jamaica, we have our athletes that stay home after high school, and we train them in Jamaica, or some of them will travel abroad. And the ones that stay home, like Usain Neville, I mean, Usain Bolt is an amazing athlete,
Hmm.
obviously, right? But he trained in Jamaica. He never went to the States. He never
Yeah.
went abroad for it. And that's for that very reason. Because
Ah, interesting.
when in Jamaica, it's very interesting. We have the fastest people in the world, but it's very laid back. It's very
It's a
like
very island
it's
tempo. Yeah.
right. So like it's always such a nuanced dynamic. It's like the persons when you see a track star walking to the track, they're walking super slow. And then they get
Ah.
on the track and they're like blazing around the track. They get off the track and then it's back to like island time, right?
Uh huh.
And so I find that, we always said like, we always warn our athletes sometimes, like, yeah, you can go abroad, but be sure not to burn yourself out. Because you could
Yes.
be in a bunch of meets, you'd be going to this, you'd be going to that, they're not giving you enough time to rest. We really believe that recovery is like super important because running track is not easy. I've seen guys run onto their vomit, like literally,
Hmm.
and they'll clap it for that moment, but the recovery is recovery. Like you're not going to every track meet. You're going to
Yeah.
pick which track meets you're going to go to that makes sense. And if you're not ready for the track meet, don't go to the track meet. Just stay
Yeah.
training,
Yeah.
build a skill, and then at some point you can go to the track meet. Serena, dad, did the same thing. He didn't have them in every tennis tournament. They stayed training, they got their rest, he built their psyche, developed them to a
Hmm.
point where it's
Hmm.
like, okay, now you can go and do what you
Yeah.
need to do.
Yeah. It's sort of the downside of American culture is I think we're number one or number two when it comes to workaholism in the world. I think Japan is the only thing that can compete with us, the only culture.
And they have a
Um,
negative birth rate because of
hmm.
it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
so,
so that's the unhealthy part of capitalism. And I wouldn't say it's directly caused by capitalism, but it's caused by greed. When people all they think about is status and
and
achievement,
profits.
and profits, which is
Yeah.
it's just not very ethical or not holistic when it comes to seeing how capitalism actually is supposed to work.
Right. And you know what I like? And I wanted to talk to you about this. Their podcast is amazing.
Oh, you mean Headspace? Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
Headspace, your podcast is
Yeah,
amazing because the last guest you had, Amy Lacey, and she
Amy
speaks
Lacey.
to this, selling her company to a
Yeah,
venture capitalist and the dynamics behind it. Like her heart is in it, and they're looking at an Excel sheet like this needs to go, this doesn't make
that's right.
sense,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's a great story.
it's an amazing story.
Hmm.
And I just love her passion. You could feel her passion for her company out. Like you said, how it almost broke her or breaks you to see capitalism not done right, right?
Yeah,
But the way she was doing it was right, right? It's,
yeah, yeah,
I want to give you a product that's healthy for you. I want to give you a product that, I feel happy giving it to you and you're happy that you're receiving it, right? And so, it's an amazing story that you had on your podcast. What drove you to want to start the Headspace podcast or the naming of it and
Well,
everything?
for me, it's an opportunity to speak and learn from the best. You know, um, an Amy Lacey, for me to get coffee with her, just a cold outreach is unlikely,
Right.
right? Um, but then we reach out, my team reaches out, and she sees some of my stuff, and she literally, before we even met, she was like, man, I really love your podcast. So we
Right.
almost like have a relationship before we even met. And now we do. And I don't know if you remember what she said in the beginning of the podcast. She said, sometimes you meet people that you're going to work with for a long time.
Yeah,
And that's
you
the
meet
first
them
thing
for
she
a
said on my
short time, and
podcast.
you know you're going to work with them for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the magic of a podcast, is that you can have, you and I are having a meaningful conversation
Right.
for what, over an hour now.
Yeah.
And we, you know, and actually in-depth conversation. And it's an incredible opportunity, right?
Right.
To learn from somebody, to meet somebody, to ask very nuanced questions. You would never be able to do that even in a networking event. It
That's
would have
true.
to be like a one-on-one, which is very unlikely for all kinds of reasons. But a podcast allows you to do that. So I've been able to speak to, David Yeager, who is the lead researcher in growth mindset, for example. And we went out and had wine and crackers after, because and I went to his book signing, because he turns out he's in Austin, right?
Right.
Or Chip Conley, who is one of the founders of Airbnb, with the founding team, and I was able to talk to him about aging and middle age, and what the value of that, and the list goes on and on and on, right?
Right.
So I'm talking to some of the smartest people on the planet on my podcast, and the reason is I want to learn, basically. So
And that's a good start too, because it's like you're genuinely curious, and if you're genuinely curious, that means
yeah, yeah,
other people are, and you have the vantage
yeah.
point and the space to do so. And I learned from that specific episode because I want everyone to go and listen to the episode so they can get context to it. But soursop is something that I grew up having in Jamaica. I have a soursop tree in my yard.
Oh, that's fantastic. I
And
didn't even know anything about soursop until I met Amy,
right.
and it's a superfruit apparently. I didn't know that.
Guarantee you, I have it in my yard. I use it all the time. My mom would literally take leaves off the soursop tree.
Hmm.
And I'm like, Mom, there's like painkillers. She's like, no, I'm going to boil this. You're going to drink it. It's going to work. And I'm like, I don't know where you get this pseudoscience from. But
Yeah, yeah.
no, no, my mom's going to be like, I told you, Ramon.
You know what? There's a similar thing. My Russian grandma. She had this 3 liter sort of glass can
Right.
of a kombucha growing up.
Yeah.
There was no kombucha commercialized yet anywhere,
Right.
and she would have this, and it looks ugly because it's like a mushroom, like a ugly mushroom floating, and then it sort of ferments and everything. And she would
Fermented.
just, she would pour me the glass, and she was like, drink it, this is really, really good for you. And I'm like, that does not sound very scientific, okay, at
Right.
all. And so, like, 30 years later, they're selling it for like $3.50 a little bottle. I'm like, my mind is blown, because I never knew that she had. I mean, she literally had that on the window in the kitchen all the time.
The price that she gave for soursop, I was like, I literally would just go to the tree and pick it off.
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
make it with milk, we make it with lime, depending on how you want it. You can eat the
Hmm.
fruit itself, you can pick the leaves off, you can make tea with it. Like these are something like I would sadly I took for granted having that, and then being and listening to her on that podcast and how powerful it is. I'm
Yeah.
like, there's lost medicine that we don't know about that
That's
our
exactly it. Yeah.
grandparents knew before modern medicine came in and did its thing, that they just knew. And it
Yeah.
sounds crazy to us, but they knew. And that's why I went to NYU for my degree in engineering, right? And one thing I loved about my experience, and I think just having this moment with you kind of brought it back to me. My friends were I had a friend who's Russian Jew. Myself is Jamaican. My next friend is from Egypt and he's Muslim. The next one is Albanian. And then we have someone from Long Island who's white. And
Hmm.
like at 1 o'clock at night when we were studying, every mom is calling and they're speaking in their own native language, but you know what the call is and you know what she's saying, even though you are not the person who understands the language, just because of the energy. Moms are moms and grandmas are grandmas.
That's
And
right.
like my grandma would do the same thing, but like drink this bush tea. I'm like, what is this? I'm not even like, what am I drinking? I don't even know what this is. She's like, don't
Yeah,
worry,
yeah,
it's good for you, right? So
yeah.
that's great. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the pod. I mean, this is an amazing moment for me, and I just want the persons who listen to this pod to learn who Christian Flores is, because you're an inspiration to the world. And the
Thank
work
you,
that
man.
you do is very important in this time. It's very important that people like yourself keep doing the work that you're doing and be upfront and honest about your spirituality, how it's helped you in your life, what you've done for the world, and how you're going to continue to do for the world. So thank you for taking this time. I appreciate all the effort that you've done to be on this podcast.
Ramon, it's a pleasure to have you, and you're a great conversationalist. Thank you for sharing your Jamaica stories about Soursop.
Of course, keep safe, my friend.